it's moving just a little bit. And he went away and had a sandwich and came back, and it's like, oh, yeah, moving a little bit more, okay? And he was able to show that these two masses attract each other, okay? Okay, so that's called the Cavendish experiment. Now, I have a particular disease, and much to my wife's regret, I believe that any experiment that was done before 1970 should be able to be done in my kitchen. Okay? And so I do this a lot. The kitchen's a great place. You can bring your power tools in. There's lots of plugs. There's nice flat granite countertops you can do experiments on. As long as Michelle's not home, I can do this. I get in trouble sometimes, mostly because my partner in crime tattles on me. And so I can't always do it in the kitchen. So let's talk about doing science in the basement, okay? So let's talk about doing this in the basement. So I can build an experiment in the basement to show you the story I just told you. I can use some common everyday objects. I got a piece of styrofoam from a packing box. I got some fishing line. I got some BBs in jars here. And I can measure this extremely tiny force that Newton predicted, that Cavendish actually measured himself. Okay? So I did this just for you guys. I built my own torsion balance. You see I got my weights balanced on a bar there. Had to cut up some aluminum cans to make things stronger. I set up a ladder in my basement. You can see all my storage area here around it. This was an early rendition. I had to seal all of these doors to get rid of the air currents and things like that. I hung the experiment down underneath the ladder. There's a box there you can see to prevent air currents from blowing on my balance. And you can see it hanging right there. I couldn't convince Michelle to let me cut a hole in the wall to put a telescope there to look. So I have a webcam looking down on the experiment, and I ran about 12 feet of USB cable out to my laptop, and I could sit outside the room and watch the torsion balance on my laptop. Okay? So you can do this too, right? You guys know this, right? This isn't just because you have fishing weights and fishing line and stuff in your house. You can do this too. Okay? So I can do this. So what did I do? I set up my torsion balance, and I set it there in its box, and I let it hang for 2 days. And I waited for it to stabilize and settle where it was going to be. Okay, and so that's in this orientation. You see it wasn't really lined up with the box, but that's where it landed. And then I went in, and I put two very large masses nearby. And what does Newton's universal law of gravitation say? It says that these big masses should attract these little masses, and I should see that whole thing turn so that they touch each other. Okay? So, since I had it hooked up to the webcam, I might as well film it for you guys, right? And so here's what it did. Okay, so it began to oscillate, and when it hits that mass, it bounced back and forth. And the fiber, the fishing line, doesn't like to be twisted, but gravity acts over and over on it, continually pulling inexorably until eventually it pins itself against the large masses that I had set down in the experiment. Okay? So, it works. We wrote down, we discovered what we thought the law of nature was. And every time we do that, there's implications. You have to take those implications to their limit and show that, indeed, this is the way the world works. And this was one of the things that had to be done when Newton first proposed the universal law. What I like about this experiment is it's extremely precise. I'm measuring a force in this experiment that is 120 billion times smaller than the force of gravity just pulling one of these jars of weights to the ground. Using sticks, strings, and a little bit of brains, thanks to Cavendish, I was able to measure something 120 billion times smaller than the forces you and I experience every day. And you can do that too, okay? Just don't tell your wife you're doing it. It'll be great. Okay. Okay? So this is high precision gravity. And this was high precision gravity in 1797, 200 years ago. What I want to tell you about is using gravity in the modern era, where we go far beyond this measly 120 billion times small forces that we're talking about. I want to talk about ultra high precision gravity in the modern era. So what we want to talk about is, how do you see the cosmos with gravity? This is an example of what we're capable of today. If we fly a satellite around the Earth, we can very precisely monitor what that satellite's orbit looks like. And the orbit of that satellite changes depending on the gravitational tug of the Earth underneath the satellite. And so as it goes around and around the Earth, there are places where the gravity is stronger and places